what's looking pretty good is Governor Ron DeSantis's, and this isn't actually as governor, but his presidential platform for what he's going to do when he takes office regarding our southern border. I actually really like, I know I've made fun of Elizabeth Warren for this in the past, but I actually really like when political candidates for president have a plan for everything. I like to be very analytical. I like to see exactly what they're going to do. I don't just want to hear their morals and values. I want to hear that, but I don't just want to hear that. I want to hear how they are going to enact that, right? Like, you may be a free market capitalist, and that's great. I'm glad to hear you say that. But how are you going to protect free market capitalism from the attack by ESG? The same thing with border security. I'm glad that you support border security, but how are you going to stop the influx of illegal aliens? How are you going to protect our sovereignty? What policies are you going to use to actually enact this? And Governor Ron DeSantis unveiled a new border plan. This was reported first by Bill Malugin. If we could show his tweet on the screen. This is what Bill Malugin reported. He said, Governor DeSantis's plan for the border includes mass deportations. DeSantis says the Trump administration failed to deliver on this promise. Border wall partially funded by taxing remittances. I actually think that's a really good idea, taxing remittances, because that means everything that an illegal alien earns in the United States and sends back to their home country, because that's what the majority of illegal aliens, that's what they do. They send money back to their home country. But that has to cross our border. And so in order to cross our border, you would tax part of that to raise the funding for this border wall. To cut off funding, federal funding of NGOs. This is also a good idea. I actually haven't heard this from other candidates. I like that because oftentimes they are just activist groups for illegal aliens. End catch and release. That one's obvious but good. Terminate all Biden administration executive authorities and end the use of parole. Good. Reject interpretation of U.S. law that migrants who have entered the United States must be allowed in to be processed. They can be repelled. That's Sovereignty 101, he tells me. Yeah, that is actually a great one. That's one that we should not gloss over. That's true. If someone crosses our border illegally, they do not have a right to stay here. They do not have a right to a court proceeding. They do not have a right to be in our country illegally. That's what the Remain in Mexico policy that the Trump administration utilized was all about. That you can claim asylum, sure, but it doesn't mean that you have a right to be released into our country as we are processing and adjudicating your asylum claim. That's one of the most powerful ones. Push to end birthright citizenship. I gotta tell you, I'm a little squishy on this one because it's not the fault of the children being born in our country. Even if an illegal alien crosses the border and gives birth on our soil, it's not the fault of that child who's born here. I understand the concept of anchor babies, and I understand that this provision in our Constitution is exploited, but it's the parents that should be punished, not the child. Because if the child is not a citizen of the United States, if they're born here and they're also not a citizen of their parents' country of origin, what are they? Just a non-citizen? I don't even know exactly how that works. So this is not, I know this is a very popular thing in the conservative movement right now, but I am just unsure about how this works. So I'm a question mark on this one. Malugin reports that DeSantis' new border plan would change the rules of engagement against the cartels and smugglers. And we're going to come back to that one in a second because that's the one that I actually have a bigger concern about. But also deputize state and local law enforcement to enforce immigration law, declare a national emergency on day one. And DeSantis said there will be a new sheriff in town in January 2025. So all of this is great. I think all of this is great. My one hesitation, aside from the birthright citizenship, is changing the rules of engagement regarding the cartels and the smugglers. This is essentially what DeSantis would do is he would allow Border Patrol agents to shoot cartels, to shoot smugglers if they were crossing our border, to kind of shoot on sight. And while that sounds really tough on the border, I'm not sure how that actually works. Right now, if a Border Patrol agent shot a cartel member who was crossing our border illegally, that Border Patrol agent could be prosecuted for it. So there would have to be some major legal changes that happened before a president could simply declare the rules of engagement changed in that way. So otherwise, Border Patrol agents wouldn't do it because they wouldn't be protected under the law if they were to use deadly force. And there are laws that govern how law enforcement is allowed to use deadly force. It has to be, the use of deadly force has to be only against crimes, the commission of crimes that are a certain level of severity. So again, a lot of law would have to change in order for that to work. We'd also essentially have to militarize our border because the cartels and the smugglers would just tit for tat. And we don't want to get into a tit for tat war with cartels that behead their enemies and smugglers that push children over the walls and beat people and rape people if they don't pay their passage. Like, these are nasty, nasty cartels and criminal gangs that we're talking about. We don't want to get into a tit for tat. It's basically the same theory. If you're going to go for the king, you need to kill the king. If we are going to actually militarize this, then we need to take those cartels out. Otherwise, escalating the violence at the border, I don't know if that's the right answer. Securing it, yes. Escalating the violence, I don't know. Other than that, this is a great plan. And it's actually very strategic of Ron DeSantis to announce this plan. The candidate on either side of the aisle who is the strongest on the border is probably going to win the election. The border is a serious issue that the majority of Americans care about, and the majority of Americans, aside from the very far radical leftists, want our border secured. They understand that the opioid overdose and death crisis in our country stems from an open border. They understand that violence happening in southern states stems from an open border. They understand that our sovereignty is at risk, that we don't have a nation if we don't have borders. And this can all be stopped. This is not just happening to us arbitrarily. This is happening as a direct result of decisions made by President Joe Biden. So the candidate that's the strongest against the border, I mean, you could argue that that's one of the reasons that President Trump won in 2016, because he was so strong about the border. He was so strong that even some Republicans were like, whoa, dude, it's a little harsh to call for a complete shutdown of the US border until we figure out what the hell is going on. Trump's words, not mine. But the candidate, you could argue the candidate that is the strongest on the US border, maybe even on the Republican primary, is going to be the one that wins. It seems like DeSantis understands this, and I think his border plan looks pretty good. And now for one cool thing that my producers wanted you to see that I haven't even seen. So shall we watch this together? Ready, set, go. From your heart, filling every part of our praise. Oh man, look at that champion pianist over there. He didn't even miss a beat, even when the ficus attacked him. It's like a church worship service, and the fake tree in the corner of the stage fell on the guy playing the piano, or playing the drums. I guess he's playing the drums. And now he's in a cage fight with it. This is like hand-to-hand combat happening over there. Oh my goodness. Someone tell him the story of David and Goliath, quick. Help him beat that tree. And there it goes again. The singer doesn't even notice. That's the beauty of this whole video. She's just like praising the Lord. Doesn't even see the spiritual attack that's happening behind her. Hi guys, it's Liz Wheeler. Don't forget to watch my show, The Liz Wheeler Show, every night at 7 p.m. on the First TV. You can download the free First TV app, or you can visit thefirsttv.com/Liz and start watching today.
Get essential headlines and truth delivered to your inbox every morning. Up First, the new daily email from The First, gets you ready to fight back against the spin from the liberal mainstream media. Get prepared, get informed. Get the Up First newsletter. Visit thefirsttv.com and sign up today.